Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another video. Everton have confirmed that tonight's Premier League fixture at Goodison Park against Manchester City has been postponed on medical grounds after Manchester City reported 5 new positive COVID-19 tests. This was announced around about an hour ago after a couple of journalists, Paul Joyce being one of them, a couple of journalists from the BBC reported that the game was in doubt after Manchester City had confirmed 5 new COVID-19 tests. Both clubs then announced just afterwards that the game would be postponed and would be played at a later date. That date yet has not been given. There's a lot to be made about this. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion surrounding it. Before we get into any of that, I just want to say I hope that those 5 players and staff of Manchester City, we don't know if they include Gabriel Jesus and Kyle Walker, who of course we knew from Christmas Day when it was announced that those 2 had tested positive and were unavailable for the game. So we don't know whether it's 3 more positive tests on top of those 2 or 5 more positive tests on top of those 2. But regardless, any of those players or staff that have tested positive for coronavirus in the Manchester City camp, we do wish them a speedy recovery and hopefully it doesn't have any detrimental effects to them and hopefully they can get back up and running and back to work as soon as possible. I also want to mention the 2,000 fans that would have been going to Goodison Park today. Of course, it is a home fixture. Liverpool City region is still within Tier 2 restrictions, so 2,000 fans would have been travelling to Goodison Park tonight to watch the game. Obviously, they won't be now. I'm not too sure how the club are going to approach this, how the club are going to decide, what happens to those fans that receive tickets. Personally, I think they either have to push the fans that receive tickets for tonight's game, push it back, and then those fans automatically get a ticket for the game against West Ham on Friday, and then those fans that had a ticket for the West Ham game get pushed back to either the game against Rotherham in the Cup or the Premier League game against Leicester. I don't really see any other way of doing it unless they say, right, okay, those who had tickets for the West Ham game stay and they continue to go to the West Ham game, and then those who had tickets for the City game get the Leicester game or the Rotherham game. But then again, there's no guarantee that we're going to be in Tier 2 come the game against Rotherham or Leicester. I'm sure there'll be another review of the tier system by then, and we may all be back in a national lockdown, or Liverpool City region may move up to Tier 3. So then it's not fair on those fans who receive tickets for the West Ham game. So I'm not really sure how the club are going to do this. I don't think it's fair for those who would have been going tonight to just have their name thrown in the hat again and just have to be lucky enough to be pulled out again, because it's not like the game was announced that it was being postponed yesterday or the day before. It was announced that it was going to be postponed 2 or 3 hours prior to fans leaving to go down to the ground. So this morning 2,000 Evertonians would have woke up, made up, going down to see the Toffees last game before the end of the year, and unfortunately they won't be able to do that now. So I'm not sure how the club are going to approach that. However, it's something that's going to need careful consideration, and I honestly don't think it's fair that those fans who would have been going tonight just get their name thrown back in the hat and they have to be lucky enough to be pulled back out again. I think they should be guaranteed a ticket for a later game. But then, on the other hand, of course, we don't know if we're going to continue to be in Tier 2 through January. So in terms of the situation itself, obviously, look, there's a lot of things to be made about it. There's positives in terms of Everton, and there's negatives, of course, as well. Like I said, we do wish a speedy recovery for all of those that tested positive for it. I don't think this fixture should have gone ahead anyway, to be perfectly honest with you. To play a Premier League game less than 48 hours before finishing another game. Obviously, Everton only finished their Premier League fixture against Sheffield United on Saturday evening, and now, literally 48 hours later, we were due to play one of the strongest squads in the country. I think it was ridiculous scheduling wise. You've got managers coming out crying day after day in, day out about how there's too many games in such a short period of time, and yet Everton are playing on a Saturday and then a Monday. So for me, this game should never have gone ahead anyway, to be perfectly honest with you. And it would give our players an extra 3 or 4 days rest to sort of recuperate and rest up and go again against West Ham on Friday. Look, ultimately, Carlo Ancelotti had already confirmed for this game that Everton will be without Richarlison, they'll be without James Rodriguez, and he hoped that those 2 players will be back for the game against West Ham on New Year's Day. So it does pose as a benefit for Everton that the players don't have to play tonight, that they get a little bit more time to rest up, and that hopefully we go into the West Ham game with a much stronger squad, because let's be honest, if James Rodriguez is available and Richarlison is available, then we're coming into it with a much stronger squad than what we would be going in today with. But there's a lot of talk around why the game's being postponed. Look, for me personally, I think it's the right decision ultimately. Now, I understand that there's been 5 positive COVID-19 tests, and I understand that there's some fans saying, well, how is it being postponed because of 5 positive COVID-19 tests when Manchester City have got a whole back squad of 14, 15 players that can play, and they're not reliant on those 5 players. I understand that. And there is big questions to be asked to the Premier League. The Premier League had released a statement a few months back as to state that no game would be postponed and teams would be forced to play under 21s players if other players needed to sit out having tested positive or being in contact with somebody who has, and under no circumstances would games be postponed. And now it seems like one of the big teams has come in with 5 tests to first team players, and now it's all of a sudden it's being postponed. But I personally, again, I think it's the right decision. The last thing Everton wants is to be mixing with a squad who have had an outbreak and potentially causing an outbreak within the Everton squad themselves. Now, I understand that there's been 5 positive tests, and I suppose every other Manchester City player has tested negative, but that's not to say that those players who have tested negative haven't come in contact with those who have tested positive and could potentially be carrying the virus and spread it to the Everton camp. So I understand the reasons is behind why it's being postponed, and I actually agree with those reasons as well. The last thing we want is an outbreak in the Everton camp of the virus, and when there seems to be an outbreak in the Manchester City camp, it makes sense for the game to be postponed. And like I said, ultimately it works for Everton in terms of getting a couple of more days rest, and having a much bigger and better squad going into the game against West Ham on New Year's Day. Like I said, this game should never have taken place anyway, but there is a lot of questions to be asked as to why a game's being postponed. Manchester City have recorded 5 positive tests. I recall a couple of months back, Leyton Orient recorded a couple or a few positive tests, and they were unable to field a team against Tottenham Hotspur in the FA Cup, I think it was, or the Carabao Cup it might have been. And instead of the FA and the governing bodies coming out and saying, right, okay, well, we'll postpone this game and you can play it at a later date, they just simply said to Leyton Orient, we'll have to kick it out the competition and Tottenham will have a buy into the next round. So again, why was that one case for Leyton Orient, but when it's Manchester City, why is it being postponed? Is it not a case of, right, you can't field the side, so unfortunately, we're going to have to give the points to Everton and we move on? Now, I didn't expect that to happen. I never expected that to happen because it's Manchester City. It's one of the bigger sides in the Premier League, and I understand that they'll have said, we'll just postpone it for a later date. But it does leave massive questions as to why, when it was Leyton Orient and Tottenham Hotspur earlier on in the year, did they just say, right, okay, you can't field the team, so you're having to postpone the results and ultimately postpone your position in the cup? Why it's not the same for a Manchester City team now in terms of postponing the points? But look, ultimately, again, there's been a bit of discussion surrounding why it's taken until 2 hours before the game for it to be announced that there's been 5 positive tests in the camp. Didn't he know this earlier on? Why wasn't this put out there to at least fans or at least supporters earlier on in the day, as to say, look, it could be in jeopardy because of this? Like I said, we knew on Christmas Day when it was announced that Gabriel Jesus and Kyle Walker had tested positive that there was at least 2 positive tests within the Manchester City camp. So I don't know why those conversations that were clearly had, in the lead up to this game. I mean, Everton's tweet confirmed that there was a meeting this afternoon. Why were we not informed that there was going to be a meeting and that there was a potential of it being cancelled? Maybe they didn't want to say anything in case it could have gone ahead. But look, ultimately, there's not much we can do about it. Like I said, for me, again, there is that conversation as to, well, why haven't they postponed? If they can't field a team, then surely the same rules should apply to a lower league side who couldn't field a team and had to forfeit the points and in that circumstance forfeit the position in the cup? Why isn't that the same with the Manchester City, and why shouldn't they forfeit the points? But ultimately, that's not how the football calendar works, and that was never how it's going to work. And I suppose the reality of the situation is both football clubs want to avoid a further spread of the virus, and Everton certainly want to avoid an outbreak in our camp as well. And it works for Everton in terms of the players getting a little bit more rest, a little bit more time to recuperate, and like I said, the likes of Richarlison potentially being back, James Rodriguez potentially being back for the game against West Ham on Friday. So look, there you go. We'll probably talk more about it on the live streams over the next couple of days or so, but I thought I'd do a little video. Like I said, personally, where I stand is I think it's the right decision. Ultimately, if there's an outbreak of the virus in a camp, the last thing we'd want is to go out and play that game. Let's say, for example, it wasn't announced that they'd had 5 positive tests, and then we went out and played that game today, and the result, whatever it is, what it is, and then it come back before the West Ham game that Dominic Calvert-Lewin had tested positive, and Richarlison had tested positive, and Alex Iwobi, and then it was announced, well, that was because Manchester City had 5 positive tests prior to that, and the game still went on. There'd probably be uproar about that. So I do think it's the right decision to postpone the game. Whether or not it should be postponed or forfeited is a different question. But ultimately, again, like I said, it was never going to happen. They were never going to say, okay, Manchester City forfeit the points and Everton get the points. It was always going to be a case of it can be played at a different time when it's safe to do so. But like I said, it works for Everton in terms of getting a little bit more time to rest. Works for the players. The only people it doesn't really work for, to be honest, is obviously those who have tested positive, and we wish them a speedy recovery. And the fans that would have been travelling down to Goodison Park today, look, ultimately, the club need to come out now and really think about that situation and what's going to happen to those fans, because it isn't fair whatsoever that they just get thrown into a hat and it's just that, well, we couldn't do anything about it. So sorry for me, those fans who were guaranteed a ticket for tonight's game and who would have been excited to travel down to Goodison Park tonight should be guaranteed a ticket for either the West Ham game or a game in the future. When instead of coming out and saying, right, we're going to do a ballot for the Leicester game, they just say everybody who got a ticket for the City game can go to the Leicester game and there's no ballot needed. Because it is really unfair on those fans that would have been massively excited to go down to Goodison Park and now can't. But look, ultimately it is what it is. This is the fear when you have outbreaks of the virus in squads, and teams are due to play on days that they record 5, 6 positive COVID-19 tests. I think we'll see a lot more of this, to be honest. I think we were the first club to have had the Merseyside derby postponed all the way back in March as well. And this seems to be the first game, certainly in the Premier League, that's being postponed due to this type of situation. So who knows what the future will hold in regards to this. We don't know when the game will be played yet. Dare say it'll be played at a time when Manchester City have got their full squad back. Probably a midweek game in between 2 Premier League games. But yeah, there you go. Let us know your thoughts on it in the comment section down below. Interesting, of course. Now Everton don't play until Friday, New Year's Day, against West Ham United. And like I said, for the squad, it's a little bit more rest and a bit more time to recuperate. But there is a lot of questions as to, what happens now, sort of thing. Anyway, if you've enjoyed it, leave a like. Like I said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe as well. And we'll see you soon on The Mighty Blues.